Week 4 of testimony in the Karen Read murder trial begins tomorrow when a key witness returns to the stand. Thanks for joining us on Canton Confidential, everyone. I'm JC Monahan. Glenn Jones has the night off. There is a lot to review in this case, and we have been able to get Monica Medea to join us now to go over what has happened in the 3 weeks so far in the Karen Read murder trial. Monica?
JC, there's been so much testimony in those 3 weeks, so let's get you up to speed on where we're at. It's been more than 2 years since John O'Keefe's body was found, and after hearing testimony from a few dozen witnesses at this point, there are still a lot of questions that haven't been answered.
After 3 weeks of testimony, the question remains, what happened the night John O'Keefe died? Here's what we do know. On the morning of January 29th, 2022, Boston police officer John O'Keefe was found outside the Canton home of fellow Boston police officer Brian Albert. This was during a blizzard. He later died at the hospital. An investigation led to O'Keefe's girlfriend, Karen Read. She was charged with second-degree murder, manslaughter while operating under the influence of alcohol, and leaving the scene of personal injury and death. Her trial is being held at the Norfolk Superior Court in Dedham. Now let's take a look at the arguments so far. The prosecution says that after a night out drinking at several Canton bars, Read dropped O'Keefe off at a party at the Alberts' home. This was around midnight as snow began to fall. They say Read hit O'Keefe before driving away and returned hours later to find his body in a snowbank. Karen Read's defense says police are framing her.
From all of those people within that house that evening, none of them at any point in time observed John O'Keefe come into the house.
You will question the veracity of the Commonwealth's witnesses, and you will question their shoddy and biased investigation.
Let's look back at key moments in the trial so far. Week 1 began with first responders to 34 Fairview Road the morning John was found. Dashcam footage of that day shows them arriving on scene and trying to resuscitate O'Keefe. Testimony from Canton police officers, firefighters, and paramedics included differing accounts over one key phrase.
You indicated in both instances that the defendant said to you, "I hit him," repeatedly, correct?
Correct. At no point in time did you ever hear her say, "I hit him, I hit him, I hit him," correct?
Correct. All I recall her saying was, "Is he alive?"
She said, "I hit him." She repeated it.
The defense spent much of the first week drilling the specifics of the police investigation. Their line of questioning focused on the relationships between investigators and the people who were inside the Albert home that night. Week 2 of testimony continued with evidence collection and Canton connections. Police explained how a leaf blower was used to uncover a broken cocktail glass under the snow near where O'Keefe's body was found. Red Solo cups borrowed from a neighbor were used to hold evidence, which was then stored in a Stop and Shop grocery bag.
We decided on finding some type of temporary plastic evidence container.
Week 2 was also our first time hearing from the Albert family, including homeowner Brian Albert.
John O'Keefe and Karen Read never entered my house.
His wife, brother, and sister-in-law testifying about their night out in Canton with John O'Keefe and Karen Read. The group met up at a bar and grill before going back to the Alberts' home. But so far, everyone on the stand testified John O'Keefe never showed up inside that home. Week 3, prosecutors brought us back to Fairview Road with witnesses who said they were inside the home that night. Brian Albert Jr. was the first witness to say he saw Karen Read's SUV in front of the house. One of his friends with him that night claims she saw something on the front lawn as they were leaving, but didn't know what it was.
I did notice behind Sarah and Jen, I did notice something out of the ordinary, like a black blob in the ground by the flagpole.
Week 3 also introduced more players, including Colin Albert. He says he was at the Albert home briefly, but he never saw John O'Keefe that night.
At any point in time, did you see John O'Keefe at that house, come into that house, around that house, at any point in time that you were there?
Never.
Week 3 ended with the prosecution calling Jennifer McCabe. She was one of 2 women with Karen Read early that morning who went searching for O'Keefe. Jennifer McCabe returns to the stand tomorrow morning.
Now, you may recall that Jennifer McCabe is the person who Google searched on her cell phone how long to die in the cold. She testified that Read asked her to Google that after John was found, but it is the time that she Googled it that really could get called into question by the defense. We're going to have to wait until tomorrow when the defense gets a chance to question her. JC?
Monica, thank you for that recap. Our Kirsten Glavin has been following the trial since the beginning. She's joining us live from Canton tonight. Kirsten, we know you had an opportunity to speak to people in and around town about the case. What are you hearing?
Well, a majority of people that we spoke with said that they knew about the trial, but many were also nervous to speak about it publicly because this has been so divisive. It's a town divided. Those living in Canton thrust into the spotlight as the Karen Reed murder trial continues at Norfolk Superior Court.
It's been weird. It's been very odd. You know, you go to your local hairdressers, people have opinions, a lot of opinions, and people are divided.
While many have their opinions about the case, many are also hesitant to say them out loud because, as they tell it, it's a small town.
It's not where you would expect to find a case like this. And I don't even get into discussing it because I think it could get very personal.
Some Canton residents still skeptical of what happened the night before John O'Keefe's body was found in the snow back in January of 2022. Reed's defense team has continuously claimed it's a law enforcement cover-up.
It's sad. It's really sad. And when you think maybe the police department may have been, you know, wrong in what they did too, because I do like the police officers here.
Others from Canton still aren't buying it.
Her lawyers are making a pretty good case, but guess what? She's involved with it. She's guilty.
But as the trial continues, many remain steadfast in their opinions, one way or another.
My opinion has not changed since the trial. It's kind of strengthened some of my views about things just not being quite right.
Another issue now at hand, the pace of the trial, with some wondering, is it moving too slowly?
Someday next week, I might ask you to think about maybe revising some of these Tuesday, Thursdays to longer days.
Last week, Judge Beverly Cannoni telling jurors she's considering turning half days of court into full days to help speed things up.
I know Judge Cannoni has been very concerned about the length of the trial, mostly trying to be sensitive to the jurors who are really giving up, putting their entire lives on hold.
Law experts like criminal defense attorney Peter Ellikin says the goal for both the defense and prosecution is to move things forward as quickly as possible without rushing the process unfairly.
Prosecutors are always concerned, too, that they don't want to lose the jury. They don't want to bore the jury or drag things out unnecessarily. They want things to go, you know, as quickly as they can, but it's got to be effective, too.
Now, Elkin also says that so far everything appears to be on track from what was projected, but that it is still a little too soon to say if this trial may go longer than those expected 4 to 6 weeks.
Kirsten, was there anyone that you approached today that said they didn't know about this trial, and that the ones that you did talk to that did know about it, did you get a sense, I know not all of them want to go on camera, but did you get a sense if this is weighted one way or another when it comes to guilt or innocence?
Well, almost everyone that we spoke with definitely knew about this trial, and I can tell you a majority of those people did tell us off camera and some on camera that they don't think Karen Reed was responsible for what happened. And I can also say that that coincides with what we've seen from the town of Canton so far. I did cover back in November, we saw the town vote to audit their police department because of this case. So that does definitely line up with what we've been seeing. But I also think it's important to note that there are very passionate opinions on both sides of the aisle here.
Definitely on both sides. Kirsten, thank you. There is a lot to follow in this trial, and our website is the best tool to keep track of what's going on. If you head to NBC10Boston.com, click on the Karen Reed tab, and there you'll see all of our nightly recaps. You can get details on where to find the live stream of the trial, which includes our YouTube page. You can also find a family tree that can help keep track of who is on the stand and who they're connected to when it comes to others in the case. Coming up, we'll be joined by our legal analyst, Michael Coyne, who will help explain what the prosecution has accomplished after 3 weeks of testimony. We'll be right back. We are joined now by legal analyst Michael Coyne. He's dean at the Massachusetts School of Law. Michael, as always, we need you here.
Thanks, Tracy.
We just heard Monica talk about some of the key moments over the last 3 weeks. This is the prosecution's time. They are putting on their witnesses to prove their case. In these 3 weeks, what, Michael, have you seen to support their case?
Not enough. I think in 3 weeks' time, we should have seen a lot more. But what we have seen is some significant things that unfortunately may have been lost along the way. The testimony right now, as Monica pointed out, is that John O'Keefe never entered that house. That's really beyond dispute with respect to the witnesses we've heard now. We know the defendant's argument that he did, but the fact is, she never said to anyone that morning that John had been inside the house. So at least one thing they've done is sort of eliminate, at least as they would see it, the chance that he was in the house and met his death somewhere inside that house. What they've done is they've also shown us that he died in the snow, that the emergency responders tried to save him. But the problem is the defendant has done a better job introducing and with some significant reaction, the fact that there's reasonable doubt here, that the police investigation was messed up, that it wasn't followed by good police work. And the fact is they've created doubt during the government's case already, and that's problematic from the prosecution standpoint.
How far along do you think we are in the prosecution's presentation?
It's hard to say because of the pace at which it's going. My guess is that there are at least 2 more full weeks of presentation because we need the forensics, we need the toxicology reports, we're going to need the recreations of the actual event in question, and we're also going to need someone to tell us about the technology with whether these phones were working correctly, whether the zones were, because we're going to have a big opportunity tomorrow for cross-examination on the text or the Google search she made about how long does it take to die in the snow.
So again, Jennifer McCabe was the last on the stand, still with the prosecution. We haven't gotten to cross-examination yet. She should be back first thing on the stand tomorrow. And yes, to just in case, if you don't remember, she is the one who said, I Googled how long does it take to die in the snow, hypothermia, on Karen's ask. Karen asked her. So the timestamp is what you're saying.
The timestamp is going to be critical, and there's going to be conflicting evidence, like there is with everything else in this case, as to what time that search was conducted. The defense wants to argue, and they seem to have some support for it, that that search was at 2:30 in the morning, well before anyone discovered his body outside 34 Fairview in the snow. The prosecution says, no, that was closer to 6 a.m. when they finally got there and discovered John's body, and it was done at the defendant's request. That's an open issue, and that technology experts will help to determine whether that's true, but it appears, like everything else in this case, there are 2 sides on that issue and 2 series of conflicting evidence that the jury will have to sort out.
Yeah, there have been very few, if I can think, perhaps John's brother and his sister-in-law, that didn't have either cross-examination or very aggressive cross-examinations. Is that typical when it's the prosecution's turn, starting to put their witnesses on the stand?
You wouldn't cross-examine the family members. They don't add much here. Their background, really, you're going to have to be very careful when the children testify. And we do have those people scheduled as well. And the court has taken pains to try and make sure that their privacy is respected. And the cross-examination will have to be very, very carefully done. Yes, the family members you're not necessarily going to hurt.
No, but I mean, like, is it normal, is it typical that every witness that the prosecution puts on can get this much pushback from the defense? What I mean is there haven't been very many witnesses prosecution has put on that the defense just sort of went, no questions.
No, the fact is, when we call witnesses as trial attorneys, what we should be trying to do is say, what can I get from them? And do I lose more on cross-examination than I'm likely to receive on the direct examination? And if the answer is yes, you don't call them unless it's absolutely critical information that that witness has and only that witness has, and then I have to put them on direct exam. But the fact is, a lot of these witnesses, the Commonwealth has lost more than they've gained from that testimony. You could have eliminated a lot of these witnesses and be in, I think, a stronger position than they are right now.
Totally answered my question, Michael.
I try.
You do, every time. I just have to ask the better questions. Michael, thank you so much. When we come back, we're going to talk to courtroom strategy. We're going to talk about that with local attorney Catherine Loftus, and we'll get her take on Jennifer McCabe's testimony so far as well. Stay tuned.
So take this for what you want. I found Jennifer McCabe to be reliable. I really did. I found her to be normal. I found her to, she didn't look nervous to me. She presented well.
That is attorney Catherine Loftus, also known on TikTok for Note My Objection, which is what you are seeing right there. You can also see her every week here on Canton Confidential because she joins us right now in studio. I want to follow up to your TikTok post. You thought Jennifer McCabe was very credible. Talk to me more about that and how it relates to the other witnesses who were in the house at that time that we've heard from so far.
I thought really, JC, that both Jen and Matt, they presented differently than some of the other Alberts and people who have testified previously. I got the general feeling when the prior civilian witnesses that everybody was on guard, everybody was on the defensive. And while their both Jen and Matt's testimony, it wasn't perfect. There were certainly issues with it. There were holes with it. But I do think that they were humanized a little bit more. I think that the connections to John that they talked about made them a little bit more relatable. And the way that they answered questions didn't appear evasive to me. If they didn't know, just said they didn't know. And they appeared fairly credible to me. It wasn't that TikTok was not the most popular with everyone because I think there's been a lot of lead up to these witnesses testifying, and they've been painted in a certain light, and I'm not sure that it quite came off that way. I thought they did pretty well overall.
Well, sometimes imperfect is perfect,
right?
In this case, because that has been some of the civilian criticism is about how you can be so specific about a time you left, but forget some really big general things that are asked of some of these witnesses.
And I think one of the things that people often forget is that there's a lot of pressure on being on a witness stand anyway, never mind in a case of this magnitude, and particularly when most of these civilians have been involved in a very different way pre-trial. So I think there's a lot of stress that comes with it. I actually think that the less precision is better. If you say, oh, I came home at 12:10 and then I checked my bedroom at 12:13 versus it was sometime after 12 o'clock. This is what I think. But I do think there are some things that you remember when she testified that she got a call at 4:53. I'm sure that memory is seared into her head, and I'm sure she went back at some point and looked at what the call was. So you want a little bit of a balance between precision, but not in every facet.
We have about a minute left. We talked before about how the prosecution's laying out its case, and you had said a lot of times it's a build-up so that the last witness is the boom, and you leave on this high note. Do you see that happening and the storytelling reaching that arc that you talked about?
I hope I'm seeing it. I think we did see a little bit with Jen and Matt. There is something that I think if they had maybe put Matt and Jen at the very beginning, it would have helped kind of get the jury to understand a little bit more of the scene. It was a little bit disjointed as I'm looking at it as we go day by day. But I do think that the Commonwealth's strength, their case, is likely to be coming. We're going to hear from likely Kerry Roberts. The jury's going to hear from the niece and nephew. That is not going to be broadcast. And then we're going to get into the physical evidence, the data, the experts, the car, the Celebrite software for the cell phone. So I think the Commonwealth thinks that's the strength of their case. Hopefully that translates to us, the viewers, and the jury.
I have 10 seconds left on this. Would you have put as many witnesses in these 3 weeks on just the first responders and the people in the house that day?
I wouldn't. I think there's a lot of unnecessary. I mean, I think you could have called a couple of the EMTs, a couple of the police officers to lay the scene. I understand that they were trying to be, show that there was some consistency, but too much duplicativeness it bores the jury. So I think they could have done it in a shorter period.
And you can lose the jury, and the jury is what you need.
That's right.
Catherine Loftus, as always, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
She's back every week. Still ahead, remembering the man at the center of this trial, John O'Keefe. Next, we recap some of what was been said about him during testimony. We'll be right back. Welcome back. We want to bring this back to what this trial is really about. Officer John O'Keefe, who tragically lost his life. His brother Paul and sister-in-law Erin were the first witnesses called to testify. They gave us a glimpse into John's life, how he stepped up to raise his niece and nephew. He became their guardian after his sister and her husband died years earlier.
Paul and Johnny went out to lunch one day, and we had kind of assumed because Johnny was out on, the streets doing his job like that Paul and I would take the kids, and Johnny said he was going to do it.
we didn't have a, large enough house to take on 2 other children. So my brother stepped in, moved into the house in Canton and raised them for 8 years.
They were a big part of his life. That is it for us tonight on Canton Confidential. Testimony resumes tomorrow around 9 a.m.